Hey, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Lakers for Tuesday. Brian Kamenetsky and Andy Kamenetsky. More mailbag. We are still unloading that thing. So much good mail did we get. Questions about Russell Westbrook, Lakers history, pop culture, all coming up next on Locked On Lakers.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. Always free, never behind a paywall. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you go to see everything, including this episode, which we are shooting today from our live at the Doer store, 170 South of Our friends at Doer. You've heard us talking a lot about them over the course of the last couple months. You can see Andy touching and feeling the clothes, loving them, showing them affection. But we really appreciate them hosting us today. Locked On 15 is how you get a little bit of a discount, 15%, whether you stop at the store 170 South La Brea or you do it at shopdoer.com. It is absolutely worth checking this stuff out. It's super comfortable. We're wearing it now. And again, thank you to the fine folks at Doer for having us. Let's get into this because we got a lot of ground to cover. We talked a lot about the potential for the rotation and what things could look like in the Pat Beverly era, what the Lakers might continue to do to improve. We did get a fun question though, and we'll start here. At Jason NV, which might be Nevada, maybe, perhaps, could be. I'm not sure. Would it make for, because there's an assumption, Andy, that Pat Beverly means that Russell Westbrook is out the door, and we talked on Monday
because they hate each other.
Because they hate each other.
They've had They've had
we hate each other.
Right. No. They we hate each other, but we can find ways to work together. Right. They have a visceral, very
decade long,
very well documented that folks may recall. Even reemerged last season. Russell Westbrook was having an awful game.
Emerged hard.
Yeah. Against the Timberwolves last season, when Patrick Beverly was a member of the Timberwolves. And there was a sequence where Patrick Beverly actually held his nose at Russell Westbrook's play and referred to him as trash. And this is just the latest incident of those two just outwardly, vocally.
Right. And it's worth on a 1 to 10 scale of things one human being can say to another, particularly in professional sports, calling another athlete trash is like a 9. It may not be the worst, but it's pretty close.
And Patrick Beverly, it should be noted, injured Russell Westbrook about a decade ago on a play that was
twice. I thought he's done it twice.
Plays that were frankly pretty dangerous and
plays that were dirty. Standard Pat Beverly.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're being honest, and this is part of the reason that Patrick Beverly is kind of despised by every fan base that isn't the team he's playing on.
Although Laker fans will let you know he's been misunderstood this whole time.
Right. No. But Clippers fans, though, will tell you he's a jerk. So it's all come full circle. So the assumption is, of course, that Pat Bev means Russ is out the door. And we learned on last week that, Shams Charania at The Athletic was on with Rich Eisen, was saying that, the Lakers aren't making concerted effort. Don't read too much into it. They're still trying to trade Westbrook. They still probably will trade Westbrook if they can get the deal they want. But they are not going to do crazy stuff just to get rid of him. So that leads to this question. Would it make for great content? This again from Jason NV. Would it make for great content if this Lakers squad stays like it is? Could you imagine post-game pressers with Russell Westbrook and Pat Beverly?
We've already lobbied, Brian, for the Lakers to wait until at least early November to trade Westbrook. We agree they need to trade him ultimately. There's a lot of different reasons that this just is not practical to have the man on the team anymore. But we need at least a couple weeks of these guys being teammates. I feel like if we don't get this, Brian, all of the lead up has been basically one big tease. If we can't get to this moment where these two have to spend time together and attempt some degree of a working relationship despite despising each other. We have to get this. Come on.
I don't want a season of it. A season is too much. It could scuttle things. It's not productive. 5 games, 10 games, 8 games. So because now it is something through the weirdness of what has become the Lakers over the last few seasons, like just circumstances have made this a thing. We should be able to see it.
I mean, again, it's a big tease if we don't get this. Also, too, really quick, I mean, Russell Westbrook at least has an opportunity to demonstrate his ability to be a very team-centric guy if they are on the same team for a little bit to actually, put.
No, this is as good an opportunity to show personal growth as he's.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. I mean, it actually is an opportunity for us.
People joke about we did the optimism episodes last week. We did two optimism episodes, and I don't know if I spent too much time on this, but there's no he's still an effective enough player that there's a place for Russell Westbrook in the league, talent wise, if he's willing to step back from superstar roles, superstar treatment, and certainly superstar pay. And if he can't show that this year, it's going to be really hard for him to find work next year because nobody's hiring him for the same gig that he's had over the last decade or so in the NBA. And if he can't demonstrate that, people would be reluctant to hire him for the $10 million gig or the $12 million gig, which, might make sense for him, in terms of his value to a team, and still pretty good money where you could sustain that out for another half decade. But if teams haven't seen any evidence that it's possible, I don't know if they'll do it. Related question, Andy, this from Lakers 17 Chips, at Lakers 17 Chips. What happens to the rotation if Westbrook stays? I assume he means Beverly's here, Westbrook is here, you still have Reeves, you still have Nunn. How do they make that work in terms of playing time? Because Pat Bev is going to play. Kendrick Nunn is going to play. In theory, based on what the Lakers have said up to this point, Westbrook is going to play. They're not going to send him home. So how do you see this rotation working out? Because there are limitations too with positionally, with the combinations you could use with those guys.
It's tough. I mean, you start looking for guys that could, I guess, in a pinch, work as a 3 in smaller lineups. Like you slide a guy up a bit. I mean, it's difficult.
How do you move let Reeves play? They go really small. Reeves plays the 3. You have Nunn
or whoever is the biggest. I mean, the Lakers are in a place right now where they're not just guard heavy. They don't have a lot of big guards taking up that glut where they feel like you can slide them. You can slide them to the 3 and kind of make it work. Like the way KCP was and Danny Green. They were both on the smaller side of what is a 3 in today's NBA, but you were able to make that work. They were just big enough and also good enough. It also just raises the question of Westbrook's minutes with LeBron anyway. That's where you really have to start asking that question of, will Russ come off the bench? And is he willing to acquiesce? Because that could actually, in terms of just floor combinations, I think create a little bit more flexibility.
Well, there doesn't seem to be the minutes there for 33 minutes of Westbrook every night.
Well,
like this is where the leverage of Darvin, the context of Darvin Ham versus Frank Vogel, the knowledge that if he's there, he's only here for a year, and it doesn't, they don't have to quote unquote make it work with Westbrook in a way that satisfies Westbrook. All right, so we got a lot of questions about Lakers history, some of our time covering the Lakers, Kobe stuff, things about teams that we really like. So we're going to get to that stuff next.
So you're hanging out with some friends and putting back some drinks. A few becomes few too many, and the evening comes to an end. People start to head out, and you think of calling for a ride, and it's like, nah, you know what? I live nearby. I think I can make it home. It's no big deal. And, what are the odds that you're going to get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst thing that could happen? Your insurance goes up. You lose your license. You lose your job. You total your car. You injure someone else. You kill someone else. You can see where this is going. Everybody knows about the risks of drunk driving, and the results are tragic. They're often deadly. And that still, however, doesn't stop people from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. And that's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads. It's to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again, play it safe, plan ahead, get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over.
Live at the Doer store, 170 South La Brea in Los Angeles. We've been talking about the clothes for a couple months. And, people behind us, they can see what it looks like and why we like it so much. It's lifestyle clothing that really adapts to your lifestyle, whatever it is, performance clothing that performs whatever it is that you need it to perform, whether that's going into the office, whether that's riding your bike, whether it's running around the park with your kids, whatever. You can do all that. And you can generally do all that wearing the same clothes the entire time, knowing that it'll look good and it'll still fit. It'll still, look clean and neat and nice, no matter what it is that you're doing. What I particularly like about Doer is the flexibility of the clothes, because you can wear it everywhere, because you can wear it with anything. It becomes a staple item. So this stuff you're going to wear over and over and over again with all the rest of your clothes that you own that may, Andy, not be as comfortable as the Doer clothes. But you have to wear them anyway.
Nothing is as comfortable as the Doer clothes.
You still may have to wear these clothes sometimes anyway. Locked on 15 is the code that you use, whether it's in the store at 170 South La Brea in the Mid-Wilshire area of LA or shopdoer.com. No matter how you're doing it, use our code locked on 15 and you can get yourself a tidy little discount for that. Again, it is some of the most comfortable clothing that you are ever going to find. It is worth checking out. And I think once you have some of it, and I know Andy agrees, you're going to find yourself wearing it all the time, which is really all you can ask from your clothes. Again, shopdoer.com, locked on 15 is the code. Okay, let's start here, Andy. Dylan Munson asks this question, and this is kind of a fun one. What is your favorite Kobe Bryant personal interaction that had nothing to do with basketball? For people who don't remember or maybe just don't know, we started covering Kobe in 2006.
The 2005-2006 season, the first of the Kwame Smush era seasons.
Yes. What a time to be alive.
Phil Jackson's first season back after taking the 1 year off in between the Threepeat era and what became the Two-Peat era.
So it's an interesting question because neither of us were like hanging with Kobe outside of work or something like that. But that's how many seasons? 2006 through 2016. So
we covered 10 years of Kobe's career.
And God certainly was around him a lot. Got to know him a little bit, and he us. So what's your answer to that question? Your favorite Kobe Bryant personal interaction that had nothing to do with basketball?
I would say broadly, because there's a specific one I know we're going to get to, but broadly, I would say just there'd be times where I talk with Kobe about movies. I mean, he was a really, really big movie guy. He liked to see a really wide variety of stuff. I remember you and I interviewed, and I'm forgetting his name, but the director of a documentary.
Oh, right. I'll look it up while you talk.
Euro Dreams of Sushi. And it's about basically the greatest sushi maker in all of Japan.
He's the GOAT. David Gelb is the guy's name.
Yeah, David Gelb.
Makes a ton of documentaries. And I have
David Gelb is a documentary
jealousy of all the stuff he gets to do.
It's a terrific documentary. And we interviewed him about a different movie, but he told us this story about how, as he was working on something, he gets this call from his assistant, and the assistant says, Kobe Bryant is on the phone for you. And he's like, no, he's not. He's like, no, really, Kobe's on the phone to talk to you. And Kobe cold called David Gelb because at the time he was looking to make the Muse documentary. And he, had seen Euro Dreams of Sushi, and like everybody, loved it. But he wanted to talk with this guy about Euro himself because, that drive that this guy had to be. Kobe saw elements of himself in Euro and wanted to find out about this, but also wanted to talk with him about filmmaking. And Kobe cold called this guy, took it upon himself to do this because he cared about the craft. And I remember just having conversations with him about random movies, and so he occasionally asked me stuff that I'd seen, things like that. I found really enjoyable.
It's just that story is the list of tragedies that are associated with him and his death are long. But we used to get all the question the assumption was when Kobe retired that he'll be back. he loves basketball too much. He's too competitive. He says, and he's not going to be able to step away. And you and I were like, no, he's done. He's gone, and you are not going to see him. Certainly not near a basketball court.
Yep.
And
you'll see him. He's going to be doing some high profile stuff.
But you won't
win an Oscar.
You won't see him near. He won't be hanging around the Lakers. He won't be courtside every day trying to do.
He ain't going to coach.
Oh God, he even said he'd be the worst coach for pros. I mean, I think he helped with like his daughters and stuff like that in those teams, but that's different. When you're working with kids, but for pros, it'd be terrible. And what because he had a curiosity. When we used to make fun of like the concept of Kobe cold calling Oprah, cold calling,
Steven Spielberg,
because
John Williams.
When Kobe, he might have called unexpectedly, but that's not cold calling. That's just an unexpected call from Kobe Bryant. Cold calling is when you and I call Steven Spielberg or Oprah, or hoping hey, Locked On Lakers podcast here. We just want some insight, President Obama, that's cold calling. When Kobe calls you, that's cool. Like, people want to take Kobe's call. But, when people will talk about that post-career thing with him, or would point to Michael Jordan and the struggles that he's kind of gone through to find footing and really be successful at stuff, beyond just sort of being Michael Jordan. It's that curiosity, because it was all legitimate. Like, he was legitimate, had a legitimate curiosity about things and about how people achieve greatness and how they do the things. And I'm not trying to make the guy out into a saint and all of that stuff. But when people talk about his post-career life, this is the part that I think is really one of the saddest things, beyond his family, beyond, the moments, is that is something that we didn't get to see. Like, the 40 years, the 50 years of post-basketball kind of creative Kobe and what that, or whatever he would have gotten in, because he had a curiosity and an intellectual bend that most people don't have. I'm not even talking about athletes, I'm saying people.
As though, Brian, for the single greatest non-basketball interaction.
We brought him in one time. We were sitting, and this is the old facility in El Segundo, which is very different than the new one. And we were just sitting there waiting for Kobe to we were sitting around the media room. Kobe came in. We happened to be talking about Sasha Vujacic's personal website. This was back in the day where personal websites were sort of becoming a thing. And Sasha had one,
SV18.com,
which we used on our, the pod, whatever incarnation of the podcast we had at the time, constantly. Oh my God, it was a treasure trove. I think you might be able to still dig it up on YouTube.
Yeah, and Kobe had never seen this thing before and thought it was absolutely hysterical.
Yes.
Like, it was unintentional comedy. Sasha was, like everything, dead serious about what he was doing.
Oh yeah,
it was so funny. Like, Sasha, he had a segment where he and his assistant Emily were picking out headbands that fans had sent him. There was one point he's like, I have to be honest,
because that was his thing.
I have to be honest, Emily, that's a lot of headbands.
It was.
there was other times where, again, he was breaking down his love of six-man volleyball with this really bad tinny reggae playing in the back.
The whole thing was, and so we showed it to Kobe. Kobe thought it was brilliant and made a point of mocking Sasha to death over it.
He also said he was going to show everybody on the team playing.
Yes. The other thing that I think I actually sort of the inverse of that is the time we showed Derek Fisher the pictures of, remember when Kobe did the LA Times, what did they call that?
The white outfit.
White outfit, shoot. And so when that came out, Fish was kind of wandering through that, and we showed those pictures to him, and his initial reaction was that they were fake.
Yeah.
He's like, are these real? These aren't real. Because he didn't want to be like taken in by some sort of like fake news catfishing scheme or something. But that was also a brilliant day. One of the few missteps, I think. But I respect Kobe. He was ahead of the curve in doing that. Like, Russ would do that now. A lot of NBA guys would wear that outfit now. So I give Kobe a lot of credit for doing this. Let's do one more here before we take a break. What is this from Paul Parinello? What is your favorite all-time highlight of any Lakers team? I have no complaints of the Cam brothers, but I know Brian is the lead announcer. That's not really so much a question, but I just stuck that in there. But what is your favorite all-time highlight of any Lakers team?
The Kobe lob to Shaq in the 2000 Western Conference Finals against the Blazers. Like, it's part of this iconic, epic comeback, but it also just felt like this crescendo to this 4-year saga of infighting and starts and stops, and these guys getting in the way of their own success. These two once-in-a-generation superstars, like, who'd been totally unable to really get on the same page, like, and agree on what that page was. That moment of them working together to really signal they were going to pull out this comeback, they were going to win this series and end up winning that championship. That's the moment to me that stands out the most for me. It's like just my all-time favorite Laker highlight.
It's like mine is not a happy one. But like when people ask me this, because there are two I always go to. There's, Game 7 in 2010. That's a weird thing to like point out as a single moment as a highlight, right? Because it's an all-encompassing game. It's the series, it's the context, whatever. If I have to pick a single moment, the one that sticks out to me the most, that I always come back to, is just the most amazing thing that I've ever seen, and it points out that highlights don't have to be happy, was Kobe hitting the free throws after he tore his Achilles. Because in my time covering sports, we've done baseball, we've done some football, we've seen some things in almost 20 years of doing this. I've never seen anything like that. And understanding what that injury was, the timing for the team, the incredible ass busting it took for them to get to the place where Kobe was trying to get him into the playoffs. The fact that they needed to make those free throws to win the game, like they were still, to win a game, to get in the playoffs that he knew he wasn't going to play in, that it could have been the last moment of his career, and functionally in many ways was. It's
the most impressive thing I've ever seen an athlete do, period.
One of the most powerful things. And then, it turned out it wasn't, because we got 60 for the last game. But again, that's not a single moment. That's a game.
Kobe doing that, I cannot say with absolute certainty that there's any other NBA player that I think could have definitely pulled that off. And I'm even including Jordan. Like, what he did in that moment was exceptional.
All right, we still have a few more questions that we want to get through. One more mailbag segment from the Doer store, 170 South La Brea. That will be next. Okay, this from sticking kind of with the history theme, kind of nostalgia theme, because we have spent a lot of time on like what's coming with this year's group, what they look like, the rotation, all that, and until the next trade comes, we've got a lot of time to think about it. These are kind of fun too. This from Cactus Dave 14. Describe what makes the three-peat, the back-to-back, and bubble teams special, respectively. Whether that's elaborating on play and style and team identity, or how they differ and are similar from one another. I will say, I didn't cover the three-peat teams, but certainly the back-to-back teams and the bubble teams.
We were around the three-peat teams a bit, but we didn't cover them.
Didn't cover them. Like I was on a treadmill for 0.4, like I was watching from the gym.
Yeah.
I know where I was.
I was actually bartending, and I got out from behind the bar and I did a lap around this around the entire restaurant.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
But that
man, if you didn't like it, I didn't care.
Back to back in the bubble teams, certainly different. It's just a different deal.
Yeah. I mean, what stood out to me, like as far as like the three-peat team, just like this combination of dominance and drama, like Kobe and Shaq are on the short list for best duos ever. Like you can stack them up against any in the history of the league. And like for all the clashes and jockeying for control of the offense and like polar opposite personalities, polar opposite work ethic, focus, ambition, all of that, they were so incredible together. And it's funny, like people talk all the time about like how many championships they could have won if they had just always been able to work together and got along and put aside stuff that was petty on both ends. But remember one time Kobe pointed out how it was actually pretty incredible that they managed to thrive together as much as they did just for 8 years, despite
that. Yeah,
not long. And I remember that changed the way both of us thought about this.
It's because both things are true at once. Like it is one of those things. Like Max Kellerman, who we used to work with at 710 ESPN back when he was based here and we worked there, regularly, said something I always thought was really smart about this kind of thing. Like when you look at the greats, the temptation is always to pick out the things and focus on the things that would have made them better. Like Kobe Bryant could have been greater if he was, maybe a little less, same killer instinct, but maybe a little less ego. Shaq could have been better. Like everyone, LeBron could be greater than he is. It is possible for all of these guys in any sport, even the greats, to be even greater. But that it can be a problem that we run into as sports fans, certainly in sports media, where you focus on those things as opposed to all the good stuff. You dwell on the two or three things that would, okay, great. Wouldn't it be great if they were even greater, instead of how amazing that they are? And yes, there is a world in which, geez, if you guys could just be a little bit more mature here, how many titles could you win? You could win 3 more. You could win 4 more. You could win 5 more. Shaq, if you would go to the gym in the off season, if you would take care of your body a little bit, Kobe, if you would give a little bit and not, be a little bit more of an easier teammate. Like, okay, all of those things are true. But that said, you shouldn't focus on that and ignore the greatness that was. And like I said, the amazingness that for 8 years they did manage to make it work, because they were oil and water from a compatibility standpoint, because they were too much the same guy.
Those personalities are in part what create the legend. Mm-hmm. Part of what created the legend for Shaq was that he was this incredibly outsized, bigger than life personality. And the bigger than life meant having interests that went beyond just sports. Kobe's drive made him incredibly difficult to relate to, but also it's what created the legend. Like at some point, you're not looking for these guys to be robots. You're looking for them to have personalities, and personalities can lead to imperfection, but the imperfection is what makes them all interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting slant. Like I don't even focus so much on style of play, because like the league, I mean, this is one of what's kind of fun about, like, you go back and you look at the Showtime footage from Legacy that they're showing a lot of, and then you go back and look at go watch those games from the Threepeat era.
Yeah.
I mean, like it's like they're all playing in a shoebox, like, and that had, 5 times the 3-point shooting as they did, back in the Showtime era. And then you watch the games, go back and watch some of that Celtics series. It's the league are so much different, is so much different, at each one of these moments. I don't really focus on that as so much as like the personalities of the team.
Yeah. I mean, the back-to-back teams, like in thinking about this, it was a new identity for the franchise and for a team. And, we watched Kobe grow in certain ways as a leader and as a teammate, and like sort of recognizing the value of understanding his teammates better as people. And, there was the whole Kobe having to prove that he could be the number one, and in certain respects having to win his 4th championship to win his 1st, which in certain respects, a lot of respects, was really stupid.
It was those teams, those titles were a continuation of the Threepeat titles.
Right. But I also too, like in thinking about it, Kobe, Powell, Andrew Bynum, Derek Fisher, like Artest, Barnes, Lamar Odom, Josh Powell, it was a really smart, like intellectually smart team to be around. Like it was a great conversation having team. Mm-hmm. Like they were a really interesting, enjoyable team to just talk with. Like it was probably my favorite team I've ever been around is the 2009, 2010 team. Like I just really enjoyed them as individuals.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And we just got to be around them more. Yeah. Like that was a time where, we had, the media access, not to get too in the weeds, is just different now. Certainly, that was the bubble season. We didn't have any. So you just don't get to see people and know people. And just, it was just a different era.
And then I would say the bubble team, what just stood out to me most was the closeness. Like they became really close very quickly. which was jarring on the heels of a team that had been incredibly disconnected. And then you just think about everything they went through with Kobe's death and the pandemic and George Floyd's murder and the social unrest that was like top of mind during their time in the bubble. It was a very unusual season, that 2020 year.
I think that's an understatement. Let's whip through a couple more of these before we're done. At FLP3, multiple choice. Best one of these things to come out of the 90s. A, Pulp Fiction. B, DVD players. C, Shaq and Kobe. D, Melrose Place.
I think it's Pulp Fiction.
It's not DVD players.
Well, the reason
they don't stand the test of time.
Well, it's not even that, though. DVD players didn't even become commercially available on a even semi-widespread basis until 1997. I looked this up. So they didn't have as big of a mark in the 90s. They really came to prominence in the 2000s.
Think about your question a little more carefully next time at FLP3.
And then Kobe and Shaq, like as a duo together, the way this was phrased, I feel like they really were a 2000s
thing again.
Right.
Attention to detail.
And then Melrose Place, let's be honest, until Heather Locklear was there, the show was unwatchable.
And it also doesn't hold up very well.
Right. Pulp Fiction, though.
Yeah, this is an easy one.
One of the best seminal films of the 90s.
This is definitely an easy one. Last one before we're done here. This from Greg Van. I thought this was interesting. As the father of identical twin boys, I would love the best piece of advice you have for me when raising them.
To begin, I would say make sure you're properly identifying them as twins, because we're not.
Yes, that was my first reaction to this question was, does he think we're identical twins?
I have to imagine he thinks we're twins.
So. Otherwise, why is he asking us for advice?
Like, I mean, just double check to make sure that your sons are actually twins, because you've misidentified us. Maybe you've misidentified your own kids.
Yes, that's possible. But aside from that, there are a couple other things about this that I think my biggest reason I didn't want twins is because I would always worry that I got them mixed up. Not like day to day, but like somewhere at the beginning, I thought, Steve was Billy and Billy was Steve, and I raised them as the wrong one throughout their entire lives. So like, misidentified their names and all that. So be wrong with that. And then I don't like adult twins.
No, you don't.
I find them creepy and weird, and they're not okay. And so I would also be worried that as my children got older, I wouldn't like them.
So your advice to Greg would be abandon your children once they become adult.
I'm assuming at this point he doesn't have the same mental hangups over adult twins as I do. I don't like them. They creep me out. So there's that. Actual parenting advice, I would say, is remember that everything is a phase. That was the smartest thing anybody ever told me. And I have 3 of them now, 3 children, 2 boys, no twins, is the smartest thing and it's the most enduring advice that I've ever received, is that everything is a phase. Unfortunately, that also encompasses the good things, but it also means that the things that are rough are a phase. They will pass. So that's the best advice that I've ever been given about sort of staying level with children.
Again, make sure they're actually twins, Greg.
Yes, we're not twins.
No.
People think that, but we're not. We are brothers.
We are brothers.
All right. Thanks again to the folks at Doer for hosting us for a couple shows. 170 South La Brea in Los Angeles. Great stuff, as you can see. I appreciate this. Look at this guy's butt. Your butt could look like this.
Yeah.
In these pants as well. And Locked On 15 is how you use the code, whether you come into the store in person or you are shopping at shopdoer.com. And we'll see everybody next time.